Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Coaching Union Podcast. In this episode, Charlie and I sit down with Stuart Yates, a science teacher, sports coach, and author whose work is rooted in helping young people make sense of their sporting journey, from community building, team building, to creating My Sport Diary. Stuart shares how reflection can be a powerful antidote to the pressure of professionalization of youth sport that we see in today's world. We explore mental health, agency, enjoyment, and the social bonds that make sport worth playing in the first place. Remember, if you're a coach or a player looking to go deeper in your development, I offer one-to-one mentoring. Just reach out at thecoachingunion@gmail.com. Now, here's episode 13, Reflective Grit with Stuart Yates. Stuart, welcome to the Coaching Union Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm currently a science teacher, and I've just released a series of sports diaries aimed at young athletes to try to help them improve. I started my sporting career, as it was, quite young. I've always loved sports. I did athletics a lot, and that led me into football after the World Cup in 1990. There weren't anywhere near as many teams back there, so I had to travel 5 or 10 miles to get to my nearest team, and then we were traveling all over Bolton and Wigan to play matches. It's grown a lot since the early 90s. From there, I played for the same team for 8 years before I went to university. Went off to Newcastle and did biology, applied biology. And the best thing about sports for me is turning up somewhere new and just walking into a team friends. I joined a team and instantly met 3-4 of my best friends all the way through university and stuck together. And when I left university, I came back home, joined old friends, played again. That's torn a cruciate ligament in my left knee for the first time then, and had a little bit of recovery time before I moved house, went over to York, and I'd already trained back as a teacher by this time. So in that time, I trained for a teacher, went over to York, met another football team, and instantly met more of my best friends where I've been best man for those. And yeah, that's kind of why I love sports and why I've carried on playing so much. But then I tore the cruciate ligament in my right knee and had a little layoff. Got into helping out with running the team and standing at the sidelines and having a word with the manager and thinking about how we can change games, a bit of a coaching side to it. And this is sort of something that I fell into after going to America when I was a bit younger. I've sort of jumped about a bit here. I've not done it in all chronological order, but when I finished uni, I went over to America for a little bit, doing soccer camps, and spent 7 or 8 weeks moving around New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and absolutely loved it. I loved working with the children from 4 years old up to 18 years old. Some amazing players and some people that had never played but were finding that they loved the game. And did so well there that I lost my passport and couldn't get home for a while, and managed to ingratiate myself with a local family who took me in and kept me there for another few months, put me up. During that time, I was meeting people in the local community, doing private coaching with children just in the backyard and on the streets and on local fields. And I was going down to the high school team where I was coaching a girls under 13s team and the high school team as well. It was a real experience, that coming from playing on muddy pitches that didn't have any grass in the centre circle and huge puddles in each goal mouth, goals that were bent in the middle where people had been hanging on them, and then going over to America to these immaculate pitches and high school teams with seating areas. It was, a whole new world, and I loved it. So when I did come back, it inspired me to start teaching, but I wanted to stay in sports as well. I carried on playing or helped out with the management and the running of teams while I was there. But also helped out in schools as well. So I ran school teams for a while before I got into other things in school, like management positions, where I was working with special needs, curriculum, and running a science department. Um, from there, step back because I started on a different adventure of having children. And this meant I'd already retired from football and I was putting the time into them, taking them to different sporting activities. My daughter likes gymnastics, and my son loves doing jujitsu. And because of those, I've been able to experience different sports then. And they started an adults MMA class on Friday nights. I was daft enough to join in. I'm twice the age of the next oldest person there, and yeah, I still keep up with them okay. But thankfully, it's nothing serious. It's nothing heavy, and I don't get hurt too much. Well, very often. But from there, from doing MMA, doing jiu-jitsu and loving the sport, I committed to it. I'd come home and watch videos. I'd be having UFC on all night because I couldn't sleep after training so late. And I realized after a few months of training that I was terrible. And I thought I was good at sport. I thought I was good at all sports that I turned my hand to. And this is something that I couldn't take everything in. There was too much. So I started trying to keep a diary and recording what I was doing so that I could use it and read through it the next week. And from there, I started to have more conversations with students in school. They were talking to me about losing every week when they were playing rugby matches. They were talking about joining a new team and not understanding what the coach was saying when they were giving instructions. And it reminded me of being younger and the problems I had. Uh, so I started to put different things together. I couldn't put together a full comprehensive jiu-jitsu diary like I wanted to. I didn't have the knowledge at the time. I didn't have the knowledge for MMA, but I had played football for 20 years and I'd been interested in it for much longer. So I started to develop this as a way to help young players reflect on what they were doing and try to support themselves a little bit more. But as I've gone through it and I started to use all the skills that I'd learned as a teacher to improve our literacy and to improve the confidence and to make it accessible for all students and all types of learners, then it's sort of grown into this. Well, I say it's not like a work of art. It's not going to be going down as a literary like award winner, but it's not my story that I'm writing. It's a chance for them to write their story for each season and check back and find out what they've done immediately, but also in 10 or 20 years' time.
So my sport diary, a sport specific diary that you've created. What sports have you done? Have you made these for?
So, like I said, I started off with football and then also made a copy for the Americans and called it My Soccer Diary, which was easy enough to do. It's the same things for both, just simplified language. And then I also made my baseball diary and my basketball diary. I'm not a big fan of baseball and basketball, but when I was in America, especially with baseball, it was the first time I'd really been exposed to it. I played a pickup softball game and absolutely loved it. I'd sit there like every week when I was in America. You'd go around to a different family and stay with them. There'd be a host family, and a lot of the times the dads I'd come in from coaching, and the dads would be sat there with a game on, and ask me to join them and sit down and have a beer, and I'd just get to see their insight into a game, and not just like the skills involved in hitting a ball, but why it matters and why people care about a certain player doing a certain thing. I was lucky enough to see a pitcher like nearly go through a perfect game, and like I think he was getting to the eighth, ninth innings, and he'd still not given up a run. And I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing. These are it's a whole culture that I know nothing about." And I try to keep an eye out and have a look for Red Sox, especially. But yeah, it is something I'm passionate about, but I don't have that knowledge of growing up with the game to immerse myself in the intricacies of it. And my basketball diary as well. I know it's a huge growing sport in the UK. There are some great players around, and more we're seeing children playing basketball on the streets and against a house and not a football. And especially in places like London and Manchester, inner city places, there's a lot more like children playing basketball there, and it's interesting to see how children aren't. Well, you see some research saying that children aren't playing sports or they're dropping out sooner and less of them are doing something. But at the same time, you see them being more passionate than ever about playing, about experiencing different types of sports. And I find that really interesting. And I'm not sure which data to believe and which stories to believe when you hear it coming out.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you measure it, right? If
Yeah.
it could link up with the early professionalization and the way that youth sport is becoming so professionalized, and everyone wants to get to an academy as quick as possible. Everyone wants to get on the fast track, and it might not account for, as you said, the kid who's either kicking a football or playing with the basketball rim right above it in at their local mugga, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere. You go to any park in Burnley right now. It's a beautiful Thursday evening, and you'll see kids playing on the mugga. So I guess it depends on what kind of numbers you're looking for.
Yeah, who's measuring it as well? But that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make them. We have so many like young people that have other ways to invest their time. There's a lot more distractions. There's a lot more available for them, like more than ever before. And sometimes it feels like football has got such a monopoly on the time, and it's got so much money that it's pushing everybody into playing football. And there's this huge competitiveness about it, the professionalization of children and parents wanting that as well. Organizations that are great for those kids that do want it, but they're selling this professional training program to try to give them the best chance of making it. And there's a lot of children that don't want to do that. They realize that they're not going to be professional, and then where do they fit? Like, I was reading something yesterday about a video game designer and how they have to make it accessible through the beginning first level. So you learn how to control, you learn how to move, and do whatever you need to do. But then it has to slowly increase in difficulty, because if it gets too hard too soon, you give up, and if it's too easy for too long, you get bored. And I feel like that's what's happening with teenagers as they go through. You go, right, here you go, we've got to get to this certain level. You've got to turn yourself inside out at training. Like, and why can't you just play for fun? Why can't you just enjoy it? And the other side of that is, if you are involved in that and that is what you want, then brilliant. It's great to have that passion, that drive. But if you are only focused on winning and you don't win, what next? Like, you've got to have something else. There's got to be other lessons to learn when you go through. I was talking about this with my year 11 students this week. They've just finished the last science GCSE. And I was saying to them, it's not about that result that they get in August. If all they're looking for is that, then if they get the result, brilliant. But then what? It's gone. And like the celebration's over in 10 minutes, an hour, or a day. You go out for a nice meal or you go to a party. Then what? You're on to the next thing. You've got 5 years at school to prepare for this GCSE. You've got 2 years at college to do the next thing. That's the important bit. That's where the lessons are learned. That's where the value is. And that's where your life is. It's not that one time where you open an envelope and see some letters, or somebody blows a final whistle and the game's over. And if you can document it as you go along, then you can realize what's happening, and you can take those moments away, and you can realize that you learn, you're getting a lot more out of it than just a result, just a win.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. A lot of things that I really resonate with there. First and foremost, the then what thing is so unbelievably accurate. Last year we had a guy join our club who played Division One baseball the year before, was comfortably top five player in our league. Really had a few moments where it was kind of unfair that we had him. And one particular week we were playing against the eventual league champions, the team that had been playing that had won the league the last 10 years in a row, and we lost pretty badly. And obviously, in that moment, I was in my head about how tough it was and about how we weren't quite where we wanted to be. And his dad, who randomly came to visit and came to watch him play, said to us, and he said to a few of the guys that were playing close to him in the game as well, thank you for this, because this is the first time I've seen him enjoy baseball since he was a kid, because he'd been part of that competitive track, Division One, get up at 6 a.m., go to bed at whatever time, get up, fit your studies in and just be on the grind, be on the constant grind. And um, it was a nice reminder that there's another track to it. That, the thing that brings you in is, you forget what the point is. Like how much you dread the car journey to a long away game until you're in the car, you realize it's an unrecorded podcast, you and your best pals in the world
It's the best
talking
bit.
absolute nonsense. It's the best bit. It's the bits I remember. Um, the thing I was really fascinated to ask you, was obviously you mentioned you were a science teacher. Sport is getting more scientific. I think about one of the things that I really have taken away from GCSE science, which is where science left me, um, was a quote of the sample size. Oh, well, if you're going to do some sort of scientific experiment, you want the sample size to be good. What do you take away from your science, like teaching and science journey that impacts your sports journeys?
I was interested in the science side of sport from a biomechanical side at first, possibly because of the injuries that I've had and learning through there. But following on from that, because I struggled to enjoy sport, and I think it affected, like, I don't know whether sport affected my mental health or my mental health affected my sport and the enjoyment, or it's all tied together. I started to read other sides of it, like I read a book called Mindset, Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it's a fantastic book that it tells you how to grow and like to learn more about what something is. And if you've not finished like learning about it, if you've not stopped trying, then you've not finished, and you can grow into it. You can keep getting better at things. And following on from there, it was the chimp paradox. And I know somebody mentioned this a few weeks ago on your podcast, and that that really opened doors for me. That there's that side of science where you're looking at the psychology of it, and seeing, and then when I was reading through then and seeing it in action day in day out with the children that I'm teaching, and then because I see such a big sample of that, I see over 100 students a week, like day in day out, and from weeks on end, and it's the same patterns coming through. And if you've let that chimp part of your brain react emotionally, and it always reacts first, then you're shutting down the rest of it. You're shutting down this more evolved area of your brain that allows you to process information and make rational decisions and stop you from getting hurt. And if you do that, apply that to sport, then I was looking back and going, oh, I was always angry when I was playing. I was always scared of making a mistake. I was always desperate to win and not let people down. And if I could have taken that away, well, you can't take it away. That's what the book's about, really. You can't stop that from happening, but you can like give the chimp a banana is a metaphor they use where you go, oh yeah, you do really want to win this. It's important to you, but it's also important that you enjoy yourself. It's also important that you have show good technique that you've tried and you do what your coach has told you. I saw it applying to me, and then I started trying to use that when I was talking to the players that I would coach or the children that I'm teaching. And I think that's the biggest one. Where science isn't just what I've learned at university. I've not really used any of that. It was more about the learning of finding out new information and applying that information in different situations. And that's what the science has taught me, really.
It's funny that you mentioned, well, chip paradox, that was mentioned by James Mallet on episode 3, and growth by Carol Dweck was mentioned the episode after, I believe, by James Bearclough, mental skills coach. So great shouts. You're speaking our language, Stuart. And it's funny you mentioned Carol Dweck and growth, because I wrote down while you were describing the baseball journal I wrote down achievement goal theory, which Growth by Carol Dweck is grounded in achievement goal theory, and it's a process over outcome mindset that she speaks about. So focusing on the process rather than the end results, rather than the scoreboard, rather than your end goal. How does My Sport Diary hammer down on that process? You mentioned a little bit about tracking it. How exactly does it um, highlight that process?
So the diary starts with a list of the skills, physical and technical skills that a player might need for their sport. And it's almost like a checklist that you can go back to, but the writing prompts as well. A lot of the time when children are starting to write something down, they don't know what to write, they don't know what to say. And we have to scaffold those things in the classroom. This is their scaffolding. It's also words that they're repeatedly reading, so they get better at reading these words. The more you see them, even if you're looking through the list and going, oh no, that's okay, that's okay. There's one. They're still seeing these words that are important, even if it's not the key focus. And the repetition is very important, I think. It's something that I've learned over the last couple of years, and when we've changed the way that we're teaching and looking more at retrieval. It's a big thing across schools where students have to practice retrieval of key information, of facts, and they do it regularly. And I thought they were going to get bored of doing the same thing day in, day out. And they didn't. They loved it. They miss it and ask for it when it's not there. They don't like the change in the routine. So I implemented some of this into the diary. It's broken up into 3 sections. The beginning of the season has the same questions, and they're fairly simple. It is, how do you feel today? And knowing that you feel happy, you're excited, you're worried, you're hungry, you're tired, whatever it is, and going back to that each week means that you can build on this. And then other questions afterwards: what did you mean? What did you need to learn? How did you put it into place? How are you going to use this in the future? And going back and reading your own writing will see whether you have this clear in your head. If you can't read what you've just written down, what you've just done, then maybe you didn't understand it and you need to go through it again. And then it's sort of like encouraging them to open a dialogue with the coach that isn't just, what am I doing now? Did I run fast enough? Did I kick the ball in the right way? Could I throw it further? It's more, we did this last week and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Can you tell me? Or when should I be using this? And asking more questions for their own development and developing a sense of agency for it. I was listening to a podcast recently, Modern Wisdom, and I don't know if you've heard it. There's a guy on there called George Mack. He's a great podcast, and there's a guy called George Mack on there, and he has a website where he's written an essay basically called High Agency, and it just fits into everything that I'm trying to develop in young people. It is when I see them struggling so much today, more than ever, then I just want to reach out and help them. And I think these sports diaries are my attempt to start doing that, to start helping them with the the worries about the future. Really, every day they're getting hammered with this message that AI is going to take over the world. You won't have jobs, it's going to do everything, and you won't have anything. And then the country's changing, the country's getting worse because of this and this and this. And you see the light and the energy going out of them, and I'm like, well, what's the point? What am I going to do? And for high agency people, they want them to be disagreeable. We want them to say, why are we doing that? I don't understand this, or I don't agree that we should do that. Can we do it in a different way? What about this? And when you've talked about the difference between boys and girls on playing or men and women's games, female players seem to question the coaches a lot more. They are a lot more disagreeable and challenge what's going on. They want to know why they're doing something. Another part of it, the second part, is having clear thinking, understanding what you what you want to do, and how you're going to get there. And I think the diary allows that to happen by scaffolding and guiding them with questions. And because in the middle of the season, there's a different 8 questions, and at the end of the season, there's a different set of questions, all for 8 games, like a 24-week season. At the end of the season, the questions are more in depth. It's like, how did your performance affect the rest of the team? What do you need to do like, what should you do to start somebody else doing their job? How are you going to support them? Thinking about you as in the bigger picture. And then the final part of the high agency person is moving to action. And as I just said previously, it's like if you're doing this in training, you're doing this in playing, and you're not sure if you're doing it right, or you know from your reflections of your previous weeks, if you're not doing that, what are you going to do about it? Not what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm not going to pick you up. I'm not going to tell you to do that. What are you going to do to make you better, to make you happier, to make you enjoy the game, or solve any problem to get to your goal? Because sometimes I see students and they'll be sat there doing nothing in a lesson, and I'll wait, deliberately wait, and nothing happens. And eventually I crack. I can't take it any longer. They beat me. And I go over and go, why are you not doing any work? No, I've not got a pen. And I'm waiting. I'm like, are you not going to ask for one? Are you not going to like ask your mate for something? Are you not going to do something to help yourself? And they don't have it. And that worries me. And that's something that I want to try and change. And it's not going to happen from its science. They don't care enough about it. They want to do well at school because they're told to do well at school. They're not disagreeable enough to go, yeah, I'm not bothered. They'll just sit there and do as they're told. But if we can tap into their passion, whether it's football or baseball or basketball, or I'm making a rugby league one at the moment, and it's going just like finishing off and having the last drafts. Then yeah, if we can tap into their passion and get them to want to do something about it, want to improve at that, and that hopefully is going to pass on to something else. It's like they've developed this skill of doing something for themselves to improve something for themselves. Then when they do get to something like science, they can go, oh, well, yeah, I know that I need to ask this. I know I can ask like, how do I do better at this? Why have I got this wrong? And then their performance just takes off in not just in the sports, but in every aspect of the life, and hopefully through to adulthood. And they can be happier, whether it is with the careers or the results, or even just the relationships and their own health, and being able to solve those problems for themselves.
Yeah, I really sort of hit something in the middle of that. I was wondering if did you notice any difference between your time in America and your time in the UK in terms of the relationship between school and sport and those types of things? Because I remember being in school, I think I must have been maybe even late 20s the first time I made like a conscious realization of I have a hole in knowledge or ability here and I need to fill that myself. And I feel like just from my experience of like young adult Americans and my knowledge of like the school to athlete system in America, it seems like something that even if it's at a sort of just getting the qualifications level, it seems like a system that's probably a little bit ahead of ours. I don't know how you feel. I have friends that left school at 16 on football scholarships, didn't get a lot out of it, maybe played pro for a couple of years, and now find themselves starting new careers mid-20s. Whereas, like the guys that, for example, our buddy who played Division One baseball we just mentioned, he's um, well suited with a degree, now a master's, a lot of which has been furnished by his ability to play sport and things like that. And he finds himself, okay, he didn't make it to the pinnacle, but sports opened a lot of other doors for him. Do you sort of agree with that as a notion?
Uh, to an extent, yeah. I feel like we have to be careful that we don't compare apples and oranges.
Yeah.
When I was in America, I was staying in wealthy areas where the parents could pay for them to go to soccer camp for a week, and the week after they would be going away and staying at the lake and things like that. And there's a lot of the children that we see in this country maybe aren't from those types of areas, and they are struggling. They don't have the same support systems. They don't have the same role models around them. But um, I think with the college system in America as well, where you can get a scholarship based on your sporting achievement, that's not something we have in this country, and it does motivate a lot of students. even if it is just because this is what I've been told I need to do. This is what the path that I'm taking. But I do, like you say, I think in America they don't have it to the same extent. I think they also have in America. They're a lot more happy for people to be successful. They want them to be successful. They celebrate them. And here you have tall poppy syndrome, don't you? Where if you put your head up, it's getting taken off, and they want to see you try, but they don't want to see you succeed. And they're going to drag you down as quickly as possible. And if you want to do well, you may have to move away from where you are and develop new friendship groups, even to carry on pushing and develop that success.
As the only American in the room, I will not add. I'm not going to jump in on this one, but I am in a classroom every day, just like you, Stuart. And that story about the kid with the pen. I mean, my gosh, that's me from 9 till 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and I see it. I see it.
It's good.
But it might link with something that you mentioned before, as far as like your experience with getting into the MMA. You mentioned like cognitive overload a little bit, and you wanted to do these things, but you actually couldn't do it. Do you think that is what these kids are experiencing? Maybe not a lack of characteristics, but a lack of skills to be able to tap into those characteristics, such as focus, concentration, goal setting, or reflection.
Yeah, I think maybe it's all of it. Where do we teach them? Where do we give them the opportunity to like be aware of these things? It is moving away from spoon feeding children to give them everything, to getting them to be more independent. And we've gone the opposite way in the last 10 or 20 years, I think. We, sorry, we were talking about it recently at work where the students turn up for an exam and they have a pen, a calculator, everything's given to them. They want revision, then we have revision lessons. We have revision classes afterwards. We have resources that we give them. We do online classes. And that's just one example where they turn up for a lesson and we go, oh, you can sit down and do some revision. And they go, okay, what should I do? It's like, well, you've been given all these things. You've seen it like modeled to you 100 times. Do that, and they're just blank. They don't know where to start because they've had that agency taken away from them. They can't apply it themselves, and if we aren't making them aware and making them struggle, then they're not going to be able to do that. And part of the problem with the professionalization of youth sport is that there's too much riding on it for the coaches as well. The coaches feel like they have to win. The parents say that the coaches have to win. So they pick the best team and play the tactics that are going to get them to win. I remember playing my first season and we had one person in the team that could kick the ball from the edge of the box over somebody's head. We were 11 years old, playing on an adult pitch with goals where there was a full meter of space over the goalkeeper. He couldn't reach it. So he scored 60 goals in a season. And all we had to do, we had me stood at the back at centre half. I'd just kick it as hard as I could. He was really fast. He'd run on and then kick the ball hard. We won games, and it was terrible. It wasn't good coaching. It wasn't fun for anybody. And I feel like that's what we're doing still. And when you have coaches that are brave enough to stand up and go, we're going to learn how to play football. We're going to learn how to make mistakes and get over them. We're going to learn how to communicate. Then we're going to get players that want to stay in the game longer. They can be happier while they're playing the game, and we'll get better players.
Yeah, huge thing there, even in the pro game, about the fact that coaches that try and do things the right way, off like a firm foundation of principles there, just aren't around long enough to see the fruits of their labor there. Is there a way of marrying those two ideas? Is there a way of like integrating those principles at the same time as, for example, the example everybody kind of goes to at the moment, if you look at sort of Man United, who are, I think Amarim has this idea, this is what he wants. He realizes that absolutely everything that he has at the moment doesn't fit into that idea. He won't abandon that core belief. and it's causing like momentary suffrage. It feels like he's entering next season on very thin ice already because of the size of the club, the stature of the club. He's slowly building pieces. I don't think he has any kind of foundation. I don't think there's five players that fit in that system. But every now and again, you'll see a situation where he'll be in a final or he'll be in a big game, and it's like that temptation to abandon his beliefs for that instant success is there. How is there a marriage of those two concepts, or is he completely right to abandon? Not just in that example, but hypothetically all round.
Well, Ange had the same problem at Spurs, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's going a similar way. You're a genius if it works, and if it doesn't, you're the villain, and you pay the price. There's a few clubs around our way because it's quite densely populated. There are a lot of lads that want to play football, a lot of girls as well, and we have like football schools where they just get all the kids together and they put them on a team, whether it's seven-a-side or something, and they can play their leagues, but then they move players around so that they're all of a similar level, similar ability. And I thought that was quite nice. So that, as we were talking about before, you're going to be playing at your level and you'll enjoy it more. I think there's something in that where instead of having competitive teams against each other in league tables, which thankfully they've got rid of at youth sport level now, that you just have players together and they play games and they do the right things. And if we can train coaches to emphasize that, and we can educate parents that we're not trying to win games, we're trying to make good footballers, we're trying to do these right things. But that's a big ask. It's a huge step that compared to some of the things that I see and I hear about with parents still threatening referees and young players because they're not happy with how the game's going. I think to go from creating these great players that are secure and doing that, it needs the parents on side, and we're a long way from that in certain areas and in certain places on some teams. You might get some parents that are fully behind this, and you could have a small community of that, but you could also have large areas where it's not.
You've mentioned the social side of sport quite a few times. How important is the social aspect of football, baseball, any kind of sport that you've been exposed to?
It's been my life, really. I met my partner because of football, and like she just happened to come to a game once, and then the rest is history.
You must have played well, Stuart. You must have played well.
It's a different story now.
Right.
I was injured at the time.
Okay.
But I had a party at my house afterwards, so that's
Nice.
I made up for it.
Nice.
The social side. Like, I don't know. Do you remember a game from when you were little, when you learned something? Like, is there anything that sticks out in your memory? Because for me, I don't really have many games as a kid. I have mistakes that I've made and things that were devastating, one or two odd moments. But I remember going back to the pub or the clubhouse with all my friends and talking about rubbish and like what's going to happen in the week and seeing lads from different schools that we don't normally see. That was what made it. And my dad's just sitting there wanting us to stay because he was seeing all the other dads. And it was his time as well to go out and enjoy that. It was great, especially if we won. If we were not won, then it was different. But I think it's a community thing. And as I said earlier, that you can. I moved across the country from Leigh to York and met somebody on my first day at a new job. He asked me to go down to a football team, and that weekend I was out with a new group of lads, and we had a great time. I knew my role as soon as I walked in. I knew what jokes we could make. I knew who was going to be leading the night out, who wasn't, who you could rely on to give you a straight answer on how you can get home, and all those other things. And I've heard about people talking about the church like that as well. And the church was set up where you can go to another country and you can walk into a church, you know when to kneel down, you know when to stand up, you know when to say amen. and you can fit into that group, that community. And I think that's more important than winning any game, and just building that community that is sort of going away at times, and it's a way to get that back.
Yeah, I think there's a few, like, for example, like, if anybody, whenever I stop with baseball and anyone says, "Oh, well, what stands out for you? What's the memory?" Um, I remember being at a set of traffic lights. There's about three of us in the car. We played two games on a Sunday. We have a half an hour break. We'd made the really bold decision to waste that entire half an hour period trying to get a McDonald's in. We're driving back from the McDonald's. We've hit the first lights. There's a car next to us. Young couple. Um, big scary guy driving. Attractive girlfriend in the passenger seat. Uh, our American friend at the time decides to flirt with the girl. He's winking at her. The guy grabs her milkshake, throws it at our car, hits the frame of his own car, and douses his entire girlfriend in milkshake. And then we pull off. We turn left. I can't. They didn't go the same way, luckily. And whenever I think about baseball, whenever I think about, oh, like, what are the big moments for you? I'm like, that is the biggest moment for me.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's like it'll never go anywhere.
yeah. I look back and I think about um, I was like I think I was still recovering from like a knee injury, and I was stood on the sidelines. Ref blew the whistle for half time, and the subs were lighting the cigs for the players coming off, and they were handing them out so they could have a halftime cig. And then one of them didn't manage to finish it, so he just like docked it out and put it in his sock for later on.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is this is elite level football that I'm playing at now. I've made
yeah,
it.
yeah. I remember being in a promotion game as a kid. This was B division to get to A division. A division is scouts for academies. It's like facilities go up, like clubs start to get funding, all this kind of stuff. We've kicked off and we're passing the ball around the back, and their keeper has just got he's got a bovril in a flask, and he's sealing up, and he's not going to drop the flask until the ball at least gets in our half. Next thing you know, our defender has punted the ball. I look up at the keeper because I'm like, we have a chance here, and he has just thrown this flask. He has just absolutely thrown this flask. You hear it hit off one of his posts, and he's like scrambling. I've then realised he's only got the one glove on because he can't like flip the flask with the two gloves on. And I'm just like, whenever you can manage to, like, I don't know, there's like a looseness that comes with it. I think the social side of it lubricates the sport to a point where you're loose enough to play it properly as well. It builds you a little bit of slack when you make mistakes because you make yourself a human being to your teammates. It kind of reminds you that it's, whilst you care a lot, it's not life or death.
Yeah, definitely. I've put blank pages after the games in and after training just for stories like that. I,
Mm.
I've forgotten so many stories, and uh, I meet up with old friends and we talk about games, and I can't remember the stories they're telling me, even when it's going, hey, it doesn't come back. But if I could look back at those stories and see what's going on, or even at the end of the season where you do end of season awards and you tell a few stories about what happened, like a screamer that went in, or somebody like falling over when they were clean through, or even the things that happened before and after games, then yeah, it's all part of it. It's all part of the story, isn't it? That you make for yourself by turning up and doing something.
Yeah, you kind of realize you're never going to be a legend of the sport, but you're always going to be a legend of whatever you do in that. That is your legend. That is your career, your
Yeah,
legacy.
yeah, definitely.
How important is reflection in that process, in that enjoyment of the game? There's a paper that I examined for one of my doctorate research papers because I'm looking at reflection and what kind of skills, characteristics develop from reflection. And I came across a paper, Tan et al., 2016, Singaporean national team archers. There were 8 of them that were studied, and they all had to do a reflection session after their training sessions preparing for like the Asian archery games or whatever. And it was funny. And the reason I used this in my paper as an example is because their performance went down. They didn't get any better. in the 8-week period, which it's an 8-week period. I think they got a new coach. There's probably a lot going on, but their enjoyment of those sessions went up, and they were excited, and they reported feeling more confident. They reported feeling more uh, just enjoyment out of the training sessions. So, how powerful is reflection in that process?
If we're not aware of what is happening, then we can't reflect. You need to know what has happened to be able to look back and see what's happening. In When you've got light bouncing off something, it it comes back, and then it's either going to be absorbed by an object, or it's going to be transmitted or reflect off again. When you do your actions, when you play a game and you train, and your actions are going to come back to you. You think about those actions again, and that's the reflection. Now you're either going to absorb it and take something from it, or it's just going to pass straight through you. And 99% of the time, we've proven that it's just passing straight through. We've not learned those lessons, or we've not learned them quick enough. If somebody's Just because you're teaching something does not mean that they're learning it. It's a huge difference between teaching and learning. And I think being able to absorb those lessons is really important. But also on top of that is we don't always learn the right lessons. There's a lot of the time I've taught something and then I've asked questions and I've had 10 different answers. Sometimes I don't know where they've come from, but sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why you thought of that, why you interpreted that way. When you've done something in a game, you might interpret it as a good thing that you've done, unaware of everything else, or unaware of the runs that people have made, unaware you've said something and criticized somebody, unaware that the coach has asked them to do something different or what happened in their life beforehand. And if you've got that and you can look back and reflect on over a long period, if you can zoom out, then the lessons that you learned might be different as well. And I think we need to be careful of just going, right, I've done this in training. This is what I need to know. That's the definitive answer. And what gets you into trouble isn't what you know, it's what you know for sure. And so, and you can't just dismiss everything else because you've learned a lesson. You need to keep learning, keep that open mind. And only because you've got a record of it, it means that you can go back and have a clearer answer. A lot of people who do journaling based on all aspects of a life, and it's a little bit like that. It's just a guided journal specifically for this one part that you're passionate about and that you're enjoying.
I don't know if it was a coach or it might have been a coach that I had who said this. He would always say, we're a species with amnesia. We forget so much, especially in the heat
Yeah.
of the moment when the adrenaline's pumping, when we're competing, when we do have those external pressures and we might be too focused on that end goal. We forget most of this stuff.
I was just thinking, since I stopped playing football, I started rock climbing as well. It's another sport that I've been doing for about 10 years now. And there's a lot of talk about being in a flow state, and that amnesia can be in there. I have finished things and had no recollection of what I've just done, but I know I enjoyed it. I know I was happy, and trying to reach that flow state is a great thing. But it's also, it can be the opposite of it as well, where you neglect to be mindful of what you're doing, and you're just going through the motions and you're doing as you're told. And it's hard. I'm Yeah. You'll know a lot more than me than about how you can identify those things. And I think if we can just have young people that are aware of that they're doing something and they want to keep doing it, that's the first step. We can talk about big things that you can go on to, but a lot of people, adults and children, they're not doing anything. Life's happening, and they're not having their impact on their own life and making the life that they want to do. And I think if you can start with your passion, and you fill in like my football diary, and then the week after you go to training and you fill it in again, and then before the match you read it and you see what you've done, and you've got that routine, that habit, and you're mindful and you're living your life and you're pushing in the direction that you want to do, then you can have that amnesia, that moment where you're just purely immersed in it, you've not got the amnesia from not thinking and not concentrating and allowing somebody else to think for you.
Yeah, there's certainly something there in terms of um I remember seeing sort of like memes around the time of the Euros around how Cole Palmer wasn't like just wasn't clever enough to feel pressure. His brain just he was too dumb to take bad advice and he was too dumb to hear noise. And that sort of touches upon the flow state. Obviously, we touched, but I can't remember if it was just pre-recording or at the start of the call, but we were touching in the model of conscious incompetence, and I feel like there's an overlap there with the unconscious competence at the end in terms of you're just you're just able to sort of do. Um,
Yeah,
just sort of pushing back to sort of reflection. Um, I've kind of maybe as like an overcompensation for not reflecting much when I was younger. I often find myself running the potential of over reflecting,
yeah.
trying to solve problems that with solutions that I wouldn't really be there, and it kind of gets a little bit unhealthy. Sort of two examples, one that I see in myself and one that I see in others. So we lost our playoff game at the end of last year. It was a really, hard fought game. I really felt like on the day, the decisions I made were backed. I think we acted in real unison. We ran really well. Gave 7 out of 9 innings, really good play. Everyone was sort of in the right. We were a complete unit that day. It's fantastic. We lost late on. I remember being in the shower the next day trying to solve the issue. We played our perfect hand. That was the plan. The plan pretty much worked, and they just beat us. And next thing I'm thinking, oh, if I went to this guy rather than that guy, would we have won? If I made this decision, and it was I'm solving problems that didn't exist at the time, and I'm kind of backseat driving. I'm Captain Hindsight there. And I also notice it in players in terms of maybe they reflect too much. They abandon their approach to things on the first sign of adversity, and it's like, well, no, there's good principles that you have there. And those things need to stay. They need to be added to. They don't need to be abandoned. How do you get into a state where you reflect, you work out what to keep, what to take away, and you don't do it too much, so you can achieve that flow state. You can achieve that. You go right, okay. This is what I need. This is what I have, and we're going again. Blank canvas.
There's a couple of things. The more simple one is you've got to trust yourself to make the best decision at the time with the information that you've got. If you've written down what you feel and what you think, and that's your evidence, then if something changes afterwards, you can't predict that. You don't know what's going to happen. So you make the best decision with the information that you've got at the time. But there's also something that I stumbled across recently that sort of fit into things that I'd been putting into place at work. It's the zone of influence and the circles where you've got your zone of influence where you can control how you feel and how you act and the things that you're going to do. And then you've got the people around you that you have influence on them, but you can't control that. And if you are making decisions based on what you can do, and you can look back and see the balance is like, am I critiquing myself and being positive and say, picking out good things that I've done? Am I picking out the things and I'm concentrating? I've just got pages and pages of things where it's negative. I didn't do this. I should have done that. Can't believe I didn't do this. Then you can be aware that your mental health is probably not in a good place and you need to change that. You need to get some balance. And I'm not like a guide for like a counselor or anything, but having something where you can recognize those things, I think is important. And looking at, oh, I did this because, sorry, I did this last time because I knew that. But since that game, you've learned a lot. You have looked back at those things and debated what could I have done differently. When next time you have a game and you find yourself going into that similar position, because you've reflected on it, you can then have this extra information. You've got more evidence to make a better decision. And it may be that you need to talk to somebody about those and go, well, I don't know if I can make the right decision with this or what would be the right decision. And I think that's better. I think that's a better leader, a better coach, where they can turn around and go, I don't know what to do. And is there anybody in here who's got suggestions? And then I can decide which one I think is the best.
It goes a bit deeper, doesn't it, Stuart, as far as like you're reflecting, you're using the skill of reflection, but then you're building problem solving abilities through that reflection. You're building maybe a bit of resilience, which is failing and then problem solving put together. I think that's like the scientific term or definition for resilience. Can you unpack that a little bit more? What do you see through the athletes who use this? What kind of characteristics do you see developing in them through the skill of reflection?
The first one that jumps to mind is it's really simple, and it's not something that, and it brought back a funny memory for me. But there was a lad who just joined a new team, and the coach had used a phrase, and he didn't have a clue what it meant. Everybody in the team knew what to do, and it was just a regular rugby phrase, but he'd not played for a year or so. He didn't know what they were talking about, and he just couldn't do it. And he felt silly. He couldn't ask in front of everybody. And he might not go back the next week. And if you've got young players that are doing that, then they either slows down the development, they can't understand, they can't speak the language, or they feel like an outcast, they're not part of that team, they can't learn from it. And it reminded me of when I first started playing football in one of my first games. I was playing at the back, and the coach said, right, push them up to the halfway line. And I didn't even know what the offside rule was then. So I started pushing this player. I was just walking into the back of the poor lad and just shoving him up there. And if we can't give them the tool to solve the problems for themselves, then they can't like make that progress on their own. Some other examples. Part of it is going across where it's developing the literacy as well. We've got the first time we tried using them at the school, one of the teachers was using it with a group of students who were playing for the team afterwards. And he took it down to the training session, and he said, oh, I've got these sports diaries for you to fill in. I've got my sports diary. You just put your name on here, and then just fill in the like couple of questions while you're waiting for your turn to play the five-side game. And they wouldn't even read the questions. They wouldn't engage with it at all. And he asked them the questions, and he had to like write down their answers onto the page. He had to write down the good things that he saw in the diary. It was just a free 4-week version. You can go to the website and download this. If people want to buy the full one, that's brilliant. If they don't or they can't, you can download a 4-week version and just reuse that all season if you need to. Just try to start getting into this idea of reflection, because these students, in a couple of weeks, they were coming and asking him for another one to be able to write. They'd lost it and wanted to carry on doing it. They had extra students coming along and saying, oh, can I have one of those? And it's like, you don't come to training though. It's like, yeah, but I play at the weekend. I'll have a go. I'll have a look. And having students that want to write is huge. It's massive when they don't even bring a pen. Yeah, it's not just for the sport. It's for a wider picture as well.
It's something that I believe in, the power of reflection. If you can reflect properly, you can solve the problem. If you go for it, kind of get into that zone of proximal development where you're challenged in just the perfect way, as you mentioned before, that support and challenge piece. Go for it, fail, reflect properly, and you're that much closer to solving the problems. And this has been insightful and just a great conversation. Really appreciate it. We always end the Coaching Union podcast with a lightning round. I got the idea from a baseball podcaster, by the way. I always have to shout out and give credit to Eric Cressy for the idea. But the first question is always a book that you would recommend every coach reads.
I've already mentioned a couple, but there is one I got on Father's Day that I've not read yet, but I've read the first few chapters. And you know, when you get something, you're like, that's going to be different. That's going to make me think different. It's called The Alter Ego Effect. Have you heard it? By Todd Herman.
I don't know the book, but I might know about the alter ego effect. Can you elaborate?
It is when you take on a different persona to carry out a different task. where athletes will walk onto a field and they will become somebody else while they're doing it. A bit like Superman turns into Clark Kent. Beyonce has her alter ego when she walks on stage. And there are a lot of players that they walk out and they can't be the nice dad that they are at home. They can't be the loving husband. They can't be the joker they are in the changing rooms. It's game time, and they're there to take souls, as Goggins would say. And just the start of it, and it just I saw it. I saw what's happening. I do that when I step into a classroom. That's not me. It's an act. It's a show that I put on, and you've got to yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it and how you can. It talks about in the future how you can create an alter ego to be successful and achieve certain things. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it.
Yeah, there was a time that I studied acting, and one of the only lectures I went to, if I'm honest, I was a terrible student. But there was a really interesting theory about how we're all just acting all of the time. At first, like this group of 18, 19-year-old guys and girls were like, well, not really. No, I'm my honest self most of the time. And then it was like, well, there'll be a good hand of you, maybe more the gents in the room that'll go home and they'll eat beans on toast in their boxer shorts in front of the football this evening. And it's like, yeah, I will do that. I won't do that here, and I won't do that at work. And I present a certain part of myself, and it's kind of like it kind of goes back to what we're saying about conscious versus unconscious. That's unconscious acting. It's unconsciously developing someone. If you can consciously do it, you can be who you want to be, and you can put into what you want to put it into. And I've never heard that. I'm definitely gonna add that to my list.
That's a good shout. And it might go back to reflection, just thinking of myself in sometimes I get a bit angry. Charlie and I have spoken about it in baseball. Charlie's my manager, by the way. And sometimes I'm really hard on myself, and I express emotion, a very sharp and rigid emotion. That's not who I am in other places. And maybe that reflection piece is understanding that alter ego that might not even be your choice. You might not really even be in control of it all the time, but understanding that competitor, that person that comes out when the whistle's blown or when the first pitch is thrown, and linking it back to the reflection piece, that would be probably more the reason to reflect on your performances.
Yeah.
So Charlie always gets the second question, Stuart.
Yeah, this is just really mean spirited from you. Like just leave me unprepared, and then I've got to just think of something on.
I,
So one thing that we haven't sort of dived into is who you've kind of taken inspiration from. Are you able to put like a personal Mount Rushmore of like your four most influential, not necessarily athletes, but the most influential people on your sports journey?
When I was growing up, I said I Italian 90, and I got into football, and I loved it. I loved the whole spectacle in Italy. I loved the passion that they had there, and it was you had some amazing footballers. There was Maradona playing there. There was Gary Lineker who scored it was top scorer maybe in that tournament, and loads of amazing players. I remember Roger Miller playing for Cameroon, doing a little dance next to the corner flag, playing with such joy, and I was like, I can't do that. And I knew that I was missing something as I was going through. And you see somebody like Ian Wright, who played with just such his heart on his sleeve, and his a big smile on his face, and I'd love to enjoy the game like they did, but I wasn't. I was more like Brian Robson and Roy Keane or Vinnie Jones. I was industrious. I had a diesel engine. I would not stop. I would break myself in two to do whatever I needed for that team. So it's like taking two sides of it. I loved Lance Armstrong. I read his book, and it got me into cycling and getting interested in that whole culture. And I was just devastated when he came out and it was confirmed about the drug taking. But then I started reading into the wider culture of cycling and how it was just everywhere. I read Miller's book. about how he got pulled into it and he completed a race, came 88th, and somebody patted him on the back and said, "Well done, you came first today out of all the clean riders."
Brief.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
and just going through sportsmen like that have just play in different ways and they take different things from it and just trying to steal all the best from these players that are professional athletes. And then I've tried to surround myself with friends that are like those athletes that I admire, the people that are honest, the people that are hardworking, the people that inspire me, and my best friends, my partner. So it's trying to take those types of players and even if they're not like the people at the end of the day, aren't they? You can put them on this pedestal. They're brilliant at football. They're amazing at cycling, but they're still people, and they're still going to make mistakes. They're still going to be sat there like watching football in the boxes, eating Pringles.
absolutely. The just as a bit of a flavour for J Rod and for anyone who's
Okay,
watching
Is
this with
there?
the footage.
nice.
Just yeah, I always remember like and not to rub it in, but I'll tell you, 90 was before me. But I remember retrospectively watching it, and the colours were just great. It was like potentially, and again, this is kind of kicks off a little bit more as we've gone through time, but like it was potentially a turning point for fashion in football. It was um like okay, these kits are going to be worn around the world, like replicated, and we kind of know what we're doing. Like the colours were fantastic, and yeah, um,
And then the Premier League kicked off, and
yeah, 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 yeah. I remember from like '02 onwards, like really vividly. And yeah, so that was my first World Cup. So, and that was Brazil at their absolute pomp. So that was a fantastic watch.
Final question. So you spent some time in the States. You mentioned that you traveled. You mentioned that you were in and around New England. Is there a spot in America, a city or a state that stole your heart? If you had to pick one.
it's a toss up really between Vermont. I just love the openness and the trees and the mountains. Massachusetts, where I lived for a little bit with a family, and they took me in. But the place that I really think about it was up in New Hampshire, Maine, sorry, where we went to a small island that was just off the coast. We had to be on a ferry for 3 hours to get over there, and it was just this tiny island and the whole community on there that just took me in and took me around to the house, treated me like they were a family or a best friend, and they just gave me everything. And yeah, I just loved it. And I was over there and I got myself into some sticky situations at times, but there was just always somebody to take care of me. It's always somebody that was looking out to just enjoy, somebody that was trying to have fun and take care of them and enjoy the company. And I just loved it. I've been back there once, maybe 18 years ago, but I'm looking at taking the kids over. I want to go over to California and go and see El Capitan and Yosemite and everything. But yeah, it's on the
Very
list.
nice. The right side of America, in my opinion. But the East Coast is good too. Did you get to go to Fenway?
Yeah.
Did you get to go to Fenway?
I did. Yeah,
Nice.
my first week there, the first family I stayed with, they just got me tickets, and I didn't understand how special it was and what a big deal it was. If you ever see this, thank you very much. I didn't like, I wasn't grateful enough at the time, and I didn't thank you profusely like I should have done, because yeah, it was brilliant. Just sitting up there and yeah, the old stadium and just the whole town around it as well. It's just yeah, it's beautiful.
Not a bad first stadium to go to, Stuart.
My first one in the UK was Anfield, standing on the cop
Oh, nice.
before it was seating. So yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, you've done all right. Stuart, thanks again. Where can people find My Sport Diary? Where can people find you on social media?
So you can go to the website, mysportdiary.com, and there's links to where they can buy the different diaries that are available. There's also links to email and social media if you want to get in touch with me that way. Put any requests in for a diary of your choice. There's rugby league that's coming out soon, and I've also had a request for cross country, but I don't know how I'm going to do that one. You can also find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, really. It's My Sport Diary. just separated with all underscores. But you can also find a link to that on the website. It'd be great to hear from anybody, and if anybody does get the diaries, please tag me in pictures and share how your young athletes are using them and how you feel like it's helping them on the journey.
Might have to get one myself, and I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Stuart, thank you. That was a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's it for episode 13, Reflective Grit. A huge thank you to Stuart Yates for reminding us that true development often happens in the still moments off the field. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with a fellow coach, parent, or athlete who's walking a similar path. And if you're ready to take the next step in your own journey, remember, I offer one-to-one mentoring for coaches and players. Just email me at thecoachingunion@gmail.com to connect. Please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and keep reflecting on the impact we have, because coaching isn't just about performance. It's about people. Until next time, keep growing. Bye, everyone.